So, hello, Stephen. How are you?
I'm all right, Harry. How are you?
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. No, I'm fantastic. Thank you. So, yeah, just before this, you told me you had a bit of time off for Chinese New Year. Was that nice?
Yeah, it was nice. It was just a quiet break for us, but this was the first day back for us today after the Lunar New Year. So
Mhm.
now it's the Year of the Dragon.
Year of the Dragon.
And so yeah, we're in Beijing. My school's the Western Academy of Beijing, and
Fantastic.
yeah, we do lots of fun stuff here, and some of it's about AI.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, what is your role within school then, Stephen? If we can start there.
Yeah, and my job is the Director of Innovation in Learning and Teaching.
Okay.
So it's a whole school leadership role. And I transitioned into the role actually in January 2020 when we were about to go online for the first time because of COVID. And my job covers like strategic development, kind of working with the curriculum teams, the educational leadership team, the school leadership team,
Yeah.
innovation projects, accreditations and authorizations, um, and kind of a whole bunch of other little bits in the school too about kind of future of education type work,
Okay.
and how we keep moving forward.
So you're sort of on the front line of trying to find new things basically, and keeping up to date with everything that's happening in the
Yeah, a
world
little
in the
bit.
world of
I mean,
technology
that's
and stuff.
that's what I do. Yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, at the same time, I'm also a doctoral researcher student at University of Bath, and so
Oh,
like
wow.
focusing on international education. But actually, a lot of that focuses on the generative AI work too, in the context of international education and how we might adapt as schools to this. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it's safe to say that you obviously wear a few different hats,
Yeah.
as you like to say. So you and they sound as though they all complement each other. Am I right in saying?
Yeah. I mean, it's a big job. It's a lot, like, but it's a really great place to be doing this work. It's an amazing school
Yeah.
with great colleagues, lots of people who are willing to try things out. And, it can be really full on, but it's
Mhm.
also really rewarding. Like we have a lot of learner agency at the school, a really beautiful
Okay.
place and campus, lots of resources.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of my job's an umbrella role and trying to help keep everybody moving in the same direction, but making sure that that direction is a really positive and exciting one.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, for sure. So would you say, because I imagine you get to well, you probably know quite a lot about what the culture is like in regards to how people view AI and AI in education over here, and how schools. Would you say there's quite a vast difference in here to Beijing, for example?
I mean, it's yeah. I've been out of the UK. I grew up in Cumbria in the north,
Mhm.
um, but I left when I was 18, and I'm
Oh
43
wow.
now.
Okay.
So I went to Belfast and then to Indonesia and then to Japan and now to China.
Wow.
Um, I do keep up with education in the UK conversations a lot online. I've
Yeah.
been on Twitter
Mhm.
pathologically for far too long. Um, and and it's very different. Like, an example difference is I'm right now today processing accreditation reports from visitors that we've had come in with agencies like the IB, NIASC, Council of International Schools, and those processes we go through are very
Mhm.
collaborative. We work very well together with the agencies, and it's a self-study, and it's all about growth.
Right.
And it's like I can see what a stark contrast it is to the Ofsted experience, for instance, that happens in the UK. It's
Yeah.
a polar opposite to that. And we're really fortunate that in our school, like we're independent, we're non-profit, we're very diverse. We get to set our own direction. Um, and so we have a lot of agency for this. And we have really supportive parents too. So we're very, very privileged in what we do.
Yeah.
And that does give us um, a lot of scope to be innovative and to try new things. I
Yeah.
mean, my belief, a very strong belief, is that schools like this, in these positions of privilege, should be sharing outwardly as much as possible too, because it might be useful to somebody else,
Yeah.
and because we can, and others might not be able to. So that's kind of where we're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic approach, and like you say, it is definitely a privileged situation to be in, us because obviously, as you know from keeping up with it on Twitter and what have you, the education system over here is obviously a lot better than it is in a lot of places, but it also is very. It's been the same for quite a while, and it's not really.
Yeah,
It seems quite stubborn to change, I think. So I
I
think
think,
it's.
and yeah, observing from a distance, right, watching that kind of slide towards a very neo-trad type view, but it's more than just educational philosophies, right? It's the whole ecosystem around them and the policies and the sociology of everything. It must be really challenging for some of the teachers back in the UK right now, like just
Yeah.
trying to make ends meet, keep up with all the demands of the job. So
I
yeah,
think from just judging from everybody who I speak to on here and within my roles outside of this, it seems to be that the main struggle is the time constraints, and obviously the workload and the admin side of things. And obviously it's a very, 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 it's quite a simple use of generative AI and things like that, but it's
mm,
that is a massive, massive benefit. But at the same time, it's also not okay to be used in a lot of places. So it seems like it's a bit of a stuck between a rock and a hard place, because there's quite clearly something there that can be really beneficial. But
yeah,
it's whether it's okay to use, but then because it's not, it creates more workload, and that's it seems to be like an endless loop. Whereas I imagine that's not really a struggle for you in accessing those kind of things. Is that correct to say?
access is a bit different in China. Um, but in terms of the school's philosophy and what we believe, right, we want people to have
Mm.
the best tools to do the job the best way they can. So
Okay.
we have rolled out a platform called Magic School
Hmm.
across the school. And it's a
Okay.
really powerful toolkit for teachers, very, very easy to use, not too expensive. And it's built by a team of educators. And it's really
Right.
worth having a look, right? Because it's that kind of tool that a teacher might use, whatever their educational philosophy or background or constraints are. There's probably something in there to help them out. And really, like a lot of these educational tools, what they do is they just make using the large language model easier for
Hmm.
teachers by having a nice interface and kind of having a lot of the prompting set up in the background and
Yeah.
just kind of easing the barriers or reducing the barriers to entry for them.
Hmm.
And there's a few of these tools around right now, but that one's showing a lot of promise as something that could ease workload anywhere, right? And I'm sure
Yeah.
there might be kind of UK specific examples being developed.
Definitely. Yeah.
We have to be careful here because we can't always access everything we want with the internet, but
Okay.
we actually do pretty well when we're accessing all of these. It's not really too much of a struggle for us. Um,
That's great.
and then we have a lot of other tools that we play with and try, right? I use
Mhm.
um, my favorite tool actually is Perplexity,
Yeah.
which is the AI enhanced search. I've been using that since it was released. So it's a very useful, quick tool, like to be able to focus what you're doing and get some real value. And then other things that we experiment with, right? Like Hey Gen for multilingual animated videos and avatars,
Mm.
or, you know, 11 Labs for some of the audio translation. And when we're working in a community that's got, we've got 58 nationalities and who
Wow.
knows how many languages being spoken. So, you know, we we're trying a lot too with that focus on how do we be more inclusive and how do we support more of our learners or our parents to
Mm.
understand what we're doing. So, we've used them before to
Mhm.
do multilingual video introductions to parent workshops
Wow.
to be able to um, understand what we're doing, right? So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
so much power available if we just kind of unlock access to them a little bit and let people play.
It's
There's a
fantastic.
real opportunity there.
Yeah, it's fantastic to hear. It's fantastic to be in a time where that is those lines which might separate people. Just it's a fantastic way of fading them, really, isn't it? And allowing people to interact where they might have not interacted, and a relationship might not have formed, and things like that. It's a great tool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very powerful. So you, we had had a brief conversation before we began the podcast, and you were telling me that you have, you've got a blog sort of, a website
Yeah.
set up really to inform everyone. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so I mean, because we kind of believe in sharing, right? And so
Mhm.
we do. You can share the link on the podcast if
Yeah,
you want
definitely
to.
will
But
do.
we have a site called learn.web.edu or Web Learns where we share lots of the things that we do at the school, and really it's there to communicate with parents or teachers or people across the school as
Mhm.
to what we've got available. But I started building this guide pre-COVID, sorry, not pre-COVID, whoosh, pre-Gen AI, pre pre-chat GPT, when we were using it for a couple of student projects with things like a deep racer, autonomous cars and so on.
Mhm.
But really at that time, until chat GPT came out, nobody was interested. Nobody would show up, right?
Yeah.
And then, what happened was, and it's totally understandable, once chat GPT got released, um, it suddenly became very accessible to everybody. And
Right.
then it became a real hot topic around schools. And so through the guide there and then through my own website and some writings and collaborations with other people, it's just sharing kind of perspectives, resources, approaches. So, we have some stuff on there for students, for some parents, for the faculty, different tools that we use. Um, back in this, and like kind of outlines what we do and why we do it. But
Mhm.
also in the background, I work with really fantastic people. I head of ed tech and IT and the libraries and ed tech team and everybody, even a group of teachers in what's called the alt team, advancing learning with technology, who volunteer, who
Oh.
just want to play, all trying things out and trying to support the school.
Mhm.
But really kind of some of our heroes that we've got, library and ed tech teams, who are the first call for many teachers, and up in the
Yeah.
high school, even helping students use some generative AI tools for their research,
Mm.
not allowing the tools to do the work for them, but actually finding academic tools that might help the students do these really quite advanced things that they do in IB schools.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on, and we've shared some of it up onto that site. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We'll make sure to share that link when we post the video out, Stephen. So you were this was like you say, this was set up. You set this up before Chat GPT,
Mm.
pre Chat
And it
GPT.
looks completely different
It's
now, by the
like
way.
it's like BC80, isn't it? Chat GPT
Yeah,
and
yeah,
COVID,
basically.
COVID's like that as well.
Yeah.
Before but yeah. So it's what was it specifically that you were looking at and talking about then? Was that more sort of like you say autonomous cars and things that were more
A
so?
little, it was a little bit, but also there was a book that we'd read in 2021 and it was
Mhm.
called AI 2041.
Okay.
And it's written by Kai-Fu Lee and Chen-Chu Fan. And Kai-Fu Lee is a major AI investor and leader in China. He used to be the head of Google in China. And Chen-Chu Fan is a well-known science fiction writer. And they collaborated on this book, which was 10 chapters, 10 stories, 10 different kind of regions of the world, 10
Wow.
different industries. And it was projecting what life might be like in 2041 based on their understanding of where AI was going.
Wow.
And it's in English and it's totally worth the read. And it's kind of like Black Mirror, but more optimistic.
Okay, good.
And
Yeah.
and
I could have left it with just like Black Mirror would have been
no, no, it's a
yeah,
lot more optimistic. It's got some edge
brilliant.
to it, but it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really kind of sung to me at that time was
Mhm.
that the kids in our classrooms, our elementary school kids, they're the characters in that book. So
Okay.
they're the children back then who might be
Mm.
5, 6, 7 years old. In 2041, that's their life.
Mhm.
And so that's what really got us going onto it, you know,
Yeah.
and thinking about how this might change how we learn, how we do healthcare, how we, you know, feed people, how we communicate, how we keep ourselves safe.
Mhm.
And it kind
It's
of went from there. We had some kids read the book and and then we had a really long, really kind of up and down COVID period.
Yeah.
So we went online in January, February 2020. We didn't get back to normal until January, February 2023.
Wow. Okay.
And then super intense period after, right? So it was on and offline, people in and out, and so on. So, literally the last thing anybody needed in November 2022 was a major education disruption. But for us, you know, it gave me something to do while we were on online learning, and it also, helped us actually keep the momentum of a lot of the innovation we had to put in place
Okay.
to adapt. So during COVID as well.
Yeah. It's I suppose you were probably in quite perhaps it depends how you want to put it, in a bit of a better position in regards to preempting it, because it sounds like you already sort of maybe had before ChatGPT, I mean, already had
Mm.
a much better understanding and outlook and sort of perhaps culture with AI and things like that than what
I was
perhaps
it,
sorry.
maybe, but it was still really a niche thing, right? It wasn't on
Yeah.
most people's radar.
No, of course
But
not.
what we did have that has really served us well, and one of the things I made in December 22 was a framework called If You Use Me AI, and it's a way to kind of just think around this. There are
Hmm.
lots of ideas out there, but what we did have is a history of being quite adaptive and student centered as a school, a
Hmm.
really strong sense of purpose as a school, like a
Okay.
strong definition of learning, really kind of key beliefs about inclusion and student agency and all these things that we want. And so, with those kind of values really lined up, and having had to adapt so many times during COVID,
Hmm.
it's, you know, it didn't feel like such an urgent thing in our context.
Okay.
Um, and then when you also pair it, like I did some coaching a few years back with Project Zero with cultures of thinking, and you think about these ways in which we learn and we encourage really great learning in schools. Like you pull all of these ideas together, the technology doesn't matter so much, not really.
Yeah.
And so, that gave us a bit of breathing space to for a few of us to really play, test things out, develop
Hmm.
resources for others to use. Um, Once we came back to normal in the beginning of 23, then we had a super intense 6 months of everything coming back at the school, celebrations, trips, events, all of this. So it still was uh, kind of minor interest for a few rather than a major interest for many. But now
Okay.
we've had all of this ready for a while. In the last 6 months in particular, people have been much more ready to engage with the conversations, and we've done some all kinds of stuff, right?
Mhm.
Workshops with parents and playgrounds with teachers. One of our high school team are doing a fantastic weekly morning series of playground time with AI
Okay.
tools. And yeah,
To just get to just sort
it's
of get
now,
really
it's about
familiarized.
now that people are really starting to engage. Yeah.
Mm.
Uh, and then from my own interest at the level, at the kind of position I'm working in, and then the academic interest as well,
Mhm.
thinking about what its potential impacts and implications are for international education as a whole.
Right.
And
Okay.
so really kind of working with the guidance from UNESCO and different organizations around how can schooling adapt to this safely
Hmm.
without slamming the doors shut, because
Yeah.
that's not a good service to the kids, but also without unleashing unsafe behaviors. And I know you've had guests on before
Hmm.
who've talked about the ethical side of things. That's really critically important to me.
Yeah.
Is they got those biases, you've got the equity of access issues, we've got the environmental issues, you've got all the other issues that can come along with it.
Hmm.
And so it's an interesting period of tension. How do we adapt,
Mm.
understanding that it's got all of its own limitations too. And if we don't
Absolutely.
adapt, we're probably holding our own kids back because they're growing up into this AI 2041 world, right?
Of course, yeah. It's like you say, it's something that we've spoken about on the podcast quite a lot, and it's also interesting because it comes into different that sort of theory sort of comes into a lot of it in regards to we speak
Mhm.
about regions, we speak about how different countries are going to take, move forward with it, and also even different, cities and towns, and the poverty-stricken towns compared to really really affluent
Yeah,
towns and cities, and it'll be. I think that obviously right now, perhaps there's always been that, in regards to access to the internet and things like that, because Google's obviously been around for so long, and it's not, if you want to find out information, you can just Google it, can't you? But it'll be interesting to see how 10 years from now, I think, which leads me on to what I was going to ask you next, Stephen,
mm.
how different things will be in 10 years. Do you sort of have obviously it's a very, it's a massive question, and I don't expect you to to have a really
Yeah,
simple
that's a big
answer,
one.
but just in your opinion, it doesn't necessarily have to be 10 years, but what does the future look like, if you like to give your opinion on that one?
There's probably quite a lot of people making money predicting what the future looks like. But I mean, I would have a look at AI 2041, the book, because there's some
Yeah.
really fantastic stories in there, and they've got explainers at the end of each chapter too about what the technology's doing. Um, you know, periodically, often you end up in these conversations about what's the future of schooling, what's the future of learning, right? And I don't believe that we'll ever not have schools because of all the societal good that schools do. And
Yeah.
so the way they might shape, I think it's a catalyst for a lot of educational change that people have been talking about for a long time. And it's going to allow much more of this learning to happen in different ways. So, the personalization of learning, the ability, it's already happening, right?
Yeah.
The ability to meet kids where they are or to develop different lines of interest. Like we had a student and he's building stuff with coding and so on, and he can use the chat GPT code interpreter to help fix up his code and so on. You got kids who are people so often underestimate the power of teenagers
Mhm.
and what they can do. And now they've just been given superpowers, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes just locked into essays to fill in a form to get a grade and all of this. And so I think we have to expand our conversations beyond that. But at the same time, we wrestle with the impact of this on human capital
Mhm.
and what it can potentially do to and do for jobs. So you saw maybe at the weekend there was the Sora video announcement from OpenAI, this super
Mhm.
high quality, realistic video from text, or Mid Journey, or I like to play with Suno AI for music and things like that. All
Yeah.
these little things you can do now. Um, it does create a sense of uncertainty,
Mhm.
and so perhaps it's not more so much about AI only as what we do as a society to make sure that the world we're giving to our kids is a world that they want to grow up into and
Yeah.
are able to make a living in and be safe in, when they're already recovering from COVID
Mhm.
and the impacts it has. They're already seeing terrible things on the news because they're drip fed all of the online news and commentary all the time.
Yeah.
There was the article in Financial Times recently about the polarization of Gen Z, um, by gender, and the
Okay.
different directions they're going, and what that might mean for politics and society.
Mhm.
Um, so there's so many of these issues coming together, and I think it goes beyond AI, and AI is accelerating some of them, but it also might
Yeah.
create opportunities for our kids, if we let them,
Mhm.
to make a positive difference, at least for themselves and hopefully for their communities,
Mm.
and ideally for the broader world. But we can't put that pressure on them if we're
No.
going to cause more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Well, Stephen, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time today. It's been fantastic speaking to you. Do
no
you
worries.
have any sort of social media platforms or anything like that that you'd like to just sort of tell the audience about now?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter as SJTYLR, um, and the same on LinkedIn and um, YouTube and Mixcloud,
Yeah.
all the same handle. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Stephen, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, and you.